Enhancement Shaman is so good and you gotta play it right now. What are you doing? Why are you still here? Of course not, watch the video. I'm just kidding. But if you haven't touched Enhancement Shaman, you are missing out because it's the coolest, flashiest, light spectacle rave party monster that you have always wanted, even though you didn't know you needed it until you actually started to get behind its wheels. But why is it so good? Is it because it's meta? Is it meta? Is it because it has high damage? It does have some high damage. Does it slap really hard while making cool animations and sounds? It does. Is that enough to main a spec? Listen, I have played Enhancement Shaman for a couple of weeks and I have put it off for about 2 years before picking it up, and boy do I regret not playing it so far. And let me tell you why. You might want to give it a try as an alt or maybe as a main swap. First of all, in terms of the meta, Enhancement is actually doing really well. Sure, when you look at stuff like Warcraft logs, Subcreation, Radar.io, or whatever you want, you might see different placements for Enhancement that kind of see it above, kind of average-ish. However, all of these rankings and data analysis logs that we're kind of, looking at and have access to are very relative, I would say, or at least influenced heavily by augmentation. It's very hard to judge a spec's performance by simply looking at all of this because you cannot just trust all of these people that are doing tier lists and ranking things because it's all going to be relative. Like this guy as well, he's ranking Enhancement Shaman right now and oh, he's putting it into A tier. I guess that's not that bad. These guys are all right. Enhancement is actually doing really well, and as someone that's been playing it for fun, considering how difficult it is to pick up, I have surprised myself at how much damage it deals. I don't even know where the damage is coming from, while constantly duking it out with the likes of Havocs and Outlaws and Mages, and I cannot say augmentations because augmentation just makes everything better, but it is holding its own and doing a lot of damage. In terms of the overall meta, what you're likely going to encounter in terms of an issue is probably your survivability, which is still atrocious, and I still cannot believe that in this day and age, when you have specs like Red Paladin and Rogue that have so many defensives, you still have classes like Shaman and Hunters and even Balanced Druids that are so squishy, and Enhancement still retains that issue. You can work around it, you can be a little bit creative, you do have Astral Shift, and you can make it, give a bigger defensive or have a shorter cooldown. You can use your Earth Elemental, and you're probably going to be using your Earth Elemental for that extra tankiness, even though you might want to use it for the utility. But, once you get into the high enough keys, that Earth Elemental, if it pulls aggro off your tank, is just gonna die in 2 seconds. But during that time, it does give you a little bit of an HP boost, which definitely helps. The devs have done a really good job at actually implementing nodes in your class tree that give you some tankiness, some magic resistance at the very least, which is very helpful. And you can actually get a little bit of a heal through some of the passives that you have, but it definitely doesn't feel like it's enough. And I hope this changes. But realistically, by the time you get to feel these issues, you're going to be well sold on the love of Enhancement Shaman because it is so fun. And these issues really only come up in keys on like 20, 21s, 22s, where things just scale really out of this world. And even when I did some of those keys, I was a little bit in the low eye level range, and that also functions into, me taking a lot of damage and kind of thinking that Enhancement is a little bit squishy. What's not squishy is our Patreon page, segue, that actually supports the channel and pretty much helps us keep the lights up here at Marcelian Online. If you like this type of content and you want to see more and maybe even support your boys in the process, considering clicking the link down in the description and checking out our Patreon page. Outside of actually supporting us, which would be really great, you can also have access to really cool stuff like, customized wallpapers with your character's transmog model made by the very own Marcelian in 4K. Also early access to some of the videos when we can get them out quicker for you guys. And of course, stuff like bloopers and other cool stuff that you can see if you just click down below and find out if there's a bunch of stuff for you. Thank you for considering it. Let's go back to the Shaman enhancement. That's squishy. But if you can overlook that enhancement, is a blast to play. And the playstyle that you're going to be engaging in is not that simple actually, but it is consistent both in raids and Mythic Plus. This is kind of like the main build that you're going to be playing with a couple of changes going into Mythic Plus because you're not going to take Crash Lightning in raids and you are going to take it in Mythic Plus. You might still get Wind Fury in raids, which, it is what it is, but the overall playstyle, the Elementalist build as how people like to call it, is the best way to get that oomph out of your class and actually do a lot of damage. It is actually really fun and engaging. It takes a little while to get into it, and if you're intimidated by its rotation, that's fair, okay? Don't let it stop you though, because it is really fun, and after you play it a little bit, it does get easier and mechanical, because similar to Arcane Mage and Outlaw, it's kind of the same rotation almost always, with a little bit of a difference and sometimes reacting to some of the procs, which actually does it very good service in keeping the spec fresh and interesting to play, so you don't actually get bored while you're out there swinging lava lashes. And with that being said, it is actually really fun, and with the tier set and primordial wave funnel into your rotation and synergy, bringing up wolves, it does feel incredibly well to kind of always have wolves out. And you would think that, you know, you're a Beastmaster Hunter. You're not a Beastmaster Hunter, although you might give Beastmaster one for their money in terms of the overall damage that you do. And in terms of the playstyle, you will be looking at, of course, as always, spreading flame shocks around with lava lashes. You can also play the lava lash type targeting build to put lashing flames on a lot of other targets for them to tick to give you more and more damage. This is probably the tedious part of the rotation, but there are fun parts as well, like using Primordial Wave, which also spawns a wolf now with a tier set, and spawning your wolves as well, reducing the cooldown even more of Primordial Wave, because it does have its cooldown get reduced, I think, by 7 seconds for each wolf you spawn, which is really cool, because you just get it a lot faster, and you just funnel this a lot, because Primordial Wave also works really well into your Maelstrom generation. You spam those lightning bolts, get a lot of haste as well. You get dogs quicker, or feral spirits, you get Primordial Wave quicker, and it just funnels. And the longer you are in your rotation, the more damage you end up doing, because it kind of like constantly scales. The faster it goes, you generate more Maelstrom, you reduce the cooldown of feral spirits more, you cast more feral spirits, you reduce the cooldown of Primordial Wave, you cast more Primordial Waves, and that reduces the cooldown of your dogs more. So it just has this nice flow that you kind of always augment with Frost Shocks as well, and Hailstorm, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they're a little bit stronger this season than they were last season, which is always good, because you kind of want your buttons to mean a lot when you press them. You will use some Sun Ring every now and again, which is okay. It doesn't have the impact that it had in the last year if you've played Enhancement in Season 2, but it is still pretty good. Plus, now with the affixes and everything, with having access to Poison Cleansing Totem, you'll feel like you do contribute a lot to your overall group in terms of, you know, Mythic Plus progression and utility that you bring. Obviously, you have Bloodlust, which is really great. And the cool part of all of this playstyle, considering the tier set implications, the build that you have, is that you have high damage always, almost always. You have consistent high damage, but then you have windows of burst. Whenever you get Primordial Wave, whenever you get Feral Spirits, whenever you funnel damage into one target with Elemental Blast, that just feels incredible, and it keeps you on your toes. Now, if this build is a little bit intimidating as you're getting in, you don't have to play this build realistically, unless you're just pushing high keys. But even if you're not, you can still play the Storm build, which is, you could say, the alternative to this. It's not quite the full build, because it doesn't take the bottom right talent tree, Thorm's Invocation Indignation, or at least in AoE it doesn't. It does take it into raid, and it is a simpler way to approach enhancement and getting you accustomed to its mechanics, its rotation, and the flow of everything that it has. And it's, let's say, a stepping stone into the ideally endgame elementalist build that you should definitely try, because it is very satisfying and rewarding at the very least, since we did have situations and designs of other specs, enhancement as well, in the past where it was not rewarding. And I remember when I mained enhancement back in Nathria, where it was heavily reliant on RNG, which is still reliant on RNG right now. However, it doesn't feel nearly as bad as it did before. For people who are worried that the RNG might get to them, there's a priority list. You have a lot more buttons now, I think 2 or 3 more buttons to press that will eat away at any potential downtime that you have. Not to mention that if you do, for some reason, end up with any particular downtime, you can augment your rotation by putting a lot of defensive totems out that will definitely help your party, like Healing Stream Totem, like Stone Skin Totem if you have it. I'm not going to mention Wind Fury Totem again, but it does actually help and give a lot of feel and flavor to the enhancement fantasy that you can bring into the group. Throughout the course of Dragonflight, enhancement has retained its really well designed, and it has been systematically, consistently above average, or at the very least at the top of the meta throughout, and it doesn't look like it's going anywhere soon. So this is the right time to play it. But listen, if you're a little bit too intimidated, or maybe if you like this kind of spec, you can also try Outlaw, that we already have a video for, and it's kind of a similar fast-paced reacting to procs gameplay, and it just does a lot of damage as well. Really fun, super recommended, my new main, check it out.